My daughter started sleeping in her Stepson's room. Then she washed the bed sheet every morning. My name is Sandra. I live in Millbrook, Ohio, which is the kind of small town that people from cities drive through without stopping. One main street, a gas station, a diner that's been there since 1974, and the particular quiet that settles over places where nothing much happens and everyone knows everything about everyone else. I have lived here my whole life. I have buried two husbands here. I have raised my daughter here, and I have tried, with varying degrees of success, to hold a life together in a town that doesn't offer many second chances. I was 17 when I married the first time. His name was David, and he was kind and steady, and he taught seventh grade history at the middle school, and he made the best chili I've ever eaten, and he was dead at 26 from a pickup truck that ran a red light on a Tuesday afternoon in November. Our daughter Maya was 3 years old. I was 20 years old, and I had $40 in my checking account, and a baby on my hip, and a town full of people who looked at me with the particular sympathy that is really just relief that it happened to someone else. I moved back in with my parents. My father had always wanted a son and had never quite forgiven me for being born female, which sounds like a dramatic thing to say, and is nonetheless completely true. He was not cruel in obvious ways. He was cold in consistent ones. He made it clear throughout my childhood that I was a problem he was managing rather than a child he was raising. And when I came home at 20 with a toddler and a dead husband, he made it equally clear that this was exactly the kind of complication he had always expected from me. My mother did what she could, which was not very much, because she had spent 30 years shrinking herself to fit the space my father left her and didn't have much left over for anyone else. I worked 2 jobs. I saved. I tried to be enough for Maya, who was a bright and serious child who understood, the way children of struggling parents always do, that she was not supposed to need too much. She didn't ask for things. She made her own lunch. She did her homework without being told. She was 7 years old and already managing her own expectations, which is the most heartbreaking thing a child can do. When Maya was 9, I met Gary Hutchins at a church potluck dinner. Gary was a quiet, deliberate man who had lost his wife to cancer 3 years earlier and was raising his son Tyler alone. And he had the particular gentleness of someone who has been through enough grief that they have stopped pretending the world is anything other than what it is. We recognized something in each other across a folding table full of casseroles, and we were married 14 months later in a small ceremony in the church garden with both kids standing beside us, looking uncertain and hopeful in equal measure. Tyler was 8 at the time. Maya was 9. They were different children. Maya precise and organized. Tyler loose-limbed and impulsive and allergic to sitting still. But they found each other the way kids do when they're both a little lonely and suddenly presented with a built-in companion. Within 6 months, they were finishing each other's sentences and fighting over the remote control and ratting each other out over minor infractions with the practiced ease of children who had decided, without announcement, to be siblings. Gary had a brother with money and no children who had always made clear that Tyler would be taken care of if anything happened. Gary had the kind of health that made that provision feel necessary. Diabetes that he didn't manage well, a heart that his doctor described as overworked, a stubborn reluctance to take his own body seriously that I argued with him about constantly and lost every time. He died when Tyler was 15 and Maya was 16. On a Thursday morning in February, quietly and without drama, which was not how he had lived, but was somehow how he went. The insurance was less than we'd expected. The savings were less than I'd hoped. What we had was the house, a 3-bedroom ranch on Clement Street that Gary had owned outright, and a small resale operation I'd been running for 2 years. Buying items at estate sales and selling them at the weekend flea market in the county fairgrounds parking lot, which brought in enough to keep the lights on in good months and required borrowing from next month in bad ones. Tyler had his uncle's standing offer, which he had declined without discussion, and which I had never asked him about directly, because I was afraid of the answer and afraid of what it meant that I was afraid. The winter after Gary died was a hard one. A pipe burst in the wall behind Tyler's bedroom in January, a slow leak that had been building since fall and that we discovered only when the ceiling started to sag, and then one morning came down in a wet, plaster gray collapse that filled Tyler's room with debris and cold air, and the particular smell of a house that has been failing quietly for longer than anyone noticed. Tyler was in the bathroom when it happened. I heard the crash from the kitchen and ran down the hall and stood in the doorway of his room, looking at the damage and feeling the specific despair of a person who has no immediate solution to an expensive problem. The repair estimate was more than I had. It was more than I had twice over. I called Gary's brother. He offered to have Tyler come stay with his family in Cincinnati while the work got done, which felt, in that moment, like the first step towards something permanent that I didn't know how to stop. Tyler refused before I could say anything. He said he wasn't going anywhere. He said it the way teenagers say things that are really about something much larger than the words themselves. So we improvised. I moved my things into the living room and gave Tyler my bedroom temporarily and put Maya in charge of a room she had previously had to herself. It was an arrangement born of necessity in winter and the particular logic of people who don't have other options. The kids were 16 and 15. They were siblings in every way that mattered. It was supposed to be temporary. It lasted 6 weeks, and in those 6 weeks I became someone I am ashamed of. It started small. Maya had always been an early riser, up by 6, showered and dressed before I'd had my first cup of coffee. So when I noticed on the third morning of the new arrangement that she wasn't up yet, I registered it, but didn't worry. When she still wasn't up by 7:30, I went to the door and knocked. No answer. I opened it and found her in bed, pale and slack in a way that stopped my breath, and when I touched her shoulder, she didn't respond with the usual teenage groan, but stayed completely still. She was unconscious. I called her name. I shook her gently. It took almost a full minute for her eyes to open, and when they did, she looked at me without recognition for a moment that lasted too long. Then she blinked and said my name and tried to sit up and went immediately dizzy. I called the doctor. He came within the hour. This is a small town, house calls still happen, and he examined her and told me she was significantly weakened, that her color was poor and she seemed depleted, and that she needed rest and nutrition and no physical stress. He said it with the mild authority of someone delivering news that seems clear to him and is not clear at all to the person receiving it. And he left me standing in the hallway with a list of foods to buy that I couldn't fully afford and a fear I couldn't name yet. Maya recovered by afternoon. She ate the toast I brought her. She said she felt fine. It was nothing. She must have slept badly. And then, while I was in the kitchen, she got up, stripped the sheet from her bed, took it to the laundry room, and began washing it by hand in the utility sink. I stood in the doorway and watched her. "What are you doing?" She startled. "The sheet needed washing." "You just fainted, Maya." "I didn't faint, I was just tired." She didn't meet my eyes. "The sheet was dirty." I looked at the sheet. It hadn't looked dirty to me. "Leave it. I'll put it in the machine." "Go back to bed," she argued. She won, the way Maya always won quiet arguments, through a combination of calm persistence and the particular stubbornness of someone who has decided what they're doing and will simply wait you out. She washed the sheet by hand, hung it on the rack in the bathroom, and only then went back to bed. I told myself it was nothing. The second time she fainted was 4 days later. Same thing, wouldn't wake up, pale as paper, slow to come back. The doctor came again, more concerned this time, and told me in the hallway while Maya rested that this kind of repeated episode in a healthy teenager was not something to dismiss. He said her body was being depleted of something, and we needed to find out what. He said if it happened again, I should take her to the hospital for blood work. I sat in the kitchen after he left, and I tried to think clearly. I made a list. Maya was fainting. She was washing the sheets every morning before I woke up. She had started keeping her bedroom door closed during the day, which she had never done before. She had stopped coming to watch television with me in the evenings. There were small bruise-like marks on her forearm that she explained when I asked, as bumps from the desk corner, which I accepted because the alternative explanation my mind was beginning to construct was something I was not ready to look at directly. Tyler was 15. He was not Maya's biological brother. He had lived in this house for 7 years, and they had always been close. Too close. Something in me began to whisper. Wasn't it strange? That whisper said how much time they spent together in that room. Wasn't it strange how they went quiet when I walked in? How they exchanged glances that meant something I wasn't part of? I want to be honest about what happened inside me during those 2 weeks, because I think it matters. I did not leap to conclusions. I arrived at them slowly, against my will, the way you arrive at a place you've been dreading, step by reluctant step, with the road behind you disappearing as you go. I told myself every morning that I was imagining things, that these were two kids I had watched grow up together, that the explanation was something ordinary and findable. And then I would see Maya's pale face, or find the sheet washed before I woke up, or catch a look between them that ended the moment I entered the room, and the ordinary explanation would recede again. One night around midnight, I woke up and saw light under their door. I lay still and listened. I could hear them talking, low voices, words I couldn't make out, and then a sound I was sure was laughter. Suppressed, careful laughter, the kind people produce when they are happy about something they are hiding. I got out of bed and went to the door and turned the handle. It was locked. I stood in the hallway in the dark with my hand on that locked doorknob, and I felt something cold move through me that I cannot describe except to say that it was the feeling of a floor giving way. I knocked. Nothing happened for 30 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. Then the sound of movement, a lamp being adjusted, and Tyler's voice saying they'd been asleep. They hadn't heard me knock. When the door opened, they were both in their respective beds with the expressions of people who have very recently arranged themselves to look like they've been sleeping. I looked at them. I looked at the room. There was nothing to see. I said goodnight and went back to the living room and did not sleep again. I watched them more carefully after that. I saw Tyler pass Maya something in the kitchen, a small item she took quickly and tucked into her sweatshirt pocket. I couldn't see what it was. I saw Maya check the window before she did it, the quick reflexive check of someone who has learned to monitor who is watching. The bruises on her arm were fading, but her color was still poor. 3 days later, Maya fainted again. This time she was unconscious for almost 2 hours, and when she came around, she was so gray and so depleted that I sat beside her bed and pressed my hands together and tried to find something to hold on to. The doctor came and said hospital, and Maya said no, she was fine. It was just a bad day, and somewhere in the negotiation, she convinced us both to wait one more day. I don't fully understand how she did that. She was always better at convincing people than she let on. That night, I made a decision. I set an alarm for 5 in the morning. When it went off, I got up quietly and went to Maya's room, and, before she was awake, I pulled the sheet from beneath her. She stirred. I carried the sheet to the kitchen, turned on the overhead light, and spread it across the table. For a moment, I saw nothing. Then I held it up toward the light. The sheet was covered in fine, short white hairs. Not a few, many, hundreds. Evenly distributed across the fabric, concentrated most heavily in the center, dispersed outward toward the edges. I stood in my kitchen at 5 in the morning, holding that sheet, and I understood why Maya had been washing it every morning before I woke up. And in the story I had been building in my head for 2 weeks. Those hairs became evidence of the worst thing I could imagine, rather than what they actually were, which I was not capable of seeing yet, because I had already decided what I was looking for. I put the sheet down. I went to Maya's room. She was awake now, sitting up, watching me with an expression I had not seen on her face before, careful and a little afraid. I said her name. I said I had seen the sheet. I told her I knew something was happening and that she needed to tell me right now what it was. She said, "Mom, it's not what you think." I said, "Then tell me what it is." She hesitated. That hesitation, 2 seconds, maybe 3, was enough. I heard myself say things I will not repeat in full, because they are among the worst things I have ever said to another person. And that person was my daughter, who was 16 years old and pale from an allergy we didn't know she had, and exhausted from working nights to keep our house standing. I said things about her character. I said things about what I thought she had done, and then I slapped her. She fell against the headboard. Tyler appeared in the doorway. He must have heard, and he looked at me with an expression I will also not forget, which was not anger but something sadder than anger. The look of someone watching a person they love do something they won't be able to take back. I said, I know what's been happening, both of you. Tyler said quietly. No, ma'am, you don't. And then Maya, with her hand against her face and her eyes bright with something that was not tears yet, but was close, told me. She told me that Tyler's friend, Connor Beaumont, whose family bred Bengal cats, the kind that sold for $2,000 each and required careful socialization in their first weeks, had come to Tyler 6 weeks ago with a problem. The Beaumonts were going to Hawaii for 2 weeks. The current litter of kittens, 8 weeks old, needed round-the-clock attention, feeding every few hours, handling for socialization, monitoring for health. The Beaumonts' usual arrangement had fallen through. Connor had asked Tyler if he could help and had offered $150 a day. $150 a day. For 2 weeks. That was $2,100, which was almost exactly the estimate for the bedroom repair. Tyler had said yes. He'd figured out the logistics carefully. The kittens would need to be at the house, in a contained space. The garage was too cold. The spare room wasn't available. The only option was to keep them in the bedroom at night, in a large wire crate, where he and Maya could monitor them without me knowing. Because they knew I didn't like animals in the house, had never liked animals in the house, had said so explicitly more than once. They had planned to tell me after the money was in hand and the repair was done, and the fact of it was accomplished rather than proposed. What they hadn't planned for was Maya's allergy. She had never known she was allergic to cats. She had never been around cats long enough to find out. But 8 weeks of Bengal kittens in a small room, 8 hours a night, had produced a reaction that built slowly, and then all at once, the fatigue, the pallor, the fainting. Tyler had researched it, bought over-the-counter antihistamines, given them to Maya quietly, adjusted the ventilation in the room. The medication helped but not completely, and the kittens' fine white hairs ended up on the sheets every night, which was why Maya washed them every morning before I could see them and ask questions. The locked door was because the kittens couldn't be allowed to escape into the rest of the house. The whispered conversations were feeding schedules and health checks. The laughter I had heard at midnight was because one of the kittens had learned to climb Tyler's leg and was doing it repeatedly while he tried to take notes. The item he'd passed her in the kitchen was a blister pack of antihistamines. Today, Maya said, was the last day. The Beaumonts were coming home tomorrow. The kittens were already in the garage in their crate, waiting to be picked up. The money had already been transferred to Tyler's account. It was done. It was over. And they had fixed the bedroom, and bought 3 weeks of groceries, and paid the electric bill that I had been moving to the back of the pile for 6 weeks. She said all of this steadily, with her hand still against her face where I had hit her. I sat down on the floor. Not on the bed, on the floor, because the floor was where I deserved to be. I want to tell you what I thought about in that moment. Sitting on my daughter's bedroom floor at 5 in the morning with the sheet with the white cat hairs on the bed beside me, I thought about Tyler, who had a wealthy uncle in Cincinnati who had offered a comfortable life and who had said no without hesitation because he wasn't leaving his family. I thought about Maya, who had spent 6 weeks waking at midnight to bottle feed kittens she was allergic to and washing sheets before dawn so I wouldn't worry, who had fainted twice and gotten up both times and kept going. I thought about the two of them in that room at midnight, laughing quietly at a kitten, climbing a leg, managing a small and earnest enterprise, trying to fix our house without burdening me with the knowledge of how broken it was. I thought about what I had believed about them. I thought about the story I had built, piece by careful piece, out of sheet washing and pale skin and a locked door, and I thought about what that story said about me rather than about them. Tyler came and sat beside me on the floor. He didn't say anything. He just sat there the way he always sat, loose-limbed and patient, with his long legs stretched out in front of him. Maya got out of bed and sat on my other side. The three of us sat on the floor of her bedroom in the early morning while somewhere in the garage 8 Bengal kittens waited to go home. I said I was sorry. It came out as barely a sound. Maya said, "Mom, it's okay." I said it was not okay. I said what I had thought about them, what I had said to her, what I had done. None of it was okay. and I would not let her tell me it was because she was being kind to me when she should have been furious. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know you were scared. I know things have been hard. I know you didn't know what else to think. Tyler said, we probably should have told you. We just didn't want to add one more thing. One more thing. I thought about that. I thought about what it meant that my children had looked at my life and decided I couldn't hold one more thing, and had then proceeded to quietly carry an extra thing themselves so that I wouldn't have to. I thought about what kind of mother produces children capable of that. And I thought about what kind of mother had sat in a kitchen 2 hours ago, constructing the worst possible version of their intentions from a set of facts that had an entirely innocent explanation. Both things were true. I had to hold both of them. The Beaumont boy came for the kittens that afternoon. I watched from the kitchen window as Tyler carried the crate to the car, and I noticed that he stopped on the way back to scratch one of them under the chin through the wire, and that the kitten pressed its face against his hand. That evening, the three of us sat at the dinner table, and I told them that I had something to say. I told them that I had been wrong. Not just about what I'd thought, but about something larger, about the way I had been carrying everything alone and calling it protection, when what it actually was a failure to trust the people in my own house. I told Tyler that I had watched him stay when he could have gone, and I hadn't said thank you, not once, not properly. I told Maya that she had spent her whole life managing her needs to fit around mine, and I had mistaken her quietness for simplicity when it was actually strength. I told them both that I was going to do better. That I didn't know exactly what better looked like yet, but that I was going to figure it out. Tyler said, you always fed us. I laughed. It surprised me, a real laugh, sudden and involuntary. He said, I'm serious. You always made sure we ate. That's not nothing. It wasn't nothing. He was right about that. But it also wasn't everything, and the distance between nothing and everything was where the work was. The bedroom was repaired in March. Tyler moved back in. The house went back to its usual arrangement, its usual sounds, its usual rhythms. Maya started tutoring neighborhood kids in the evenings. Math and reading, $5 an hour, which became 10 once word got around that she was good at it. Tyler picked up extra shifts at the hardware store on weekends. The flea market booth started doing better, partly because I'd stopped spending my energy on fear and had more of it available for the actual work of selling things. Slowly, then less slowly, things got better, not fixed, better. There is a difference between a life that is repaired and a life that is being lived. And we were doing the second thing, which is the only version that actually moves forward. Maya is in college now, studying education. She wants to teach, which surprises no one who knows her. Tyler is finishing a trade certification in HVAC, which he chose because, he told me, he wants to be the person who shows up when something breaks. He said it practically, without sentiment. I heard everything in it. Gary's brother called last Thanksgiving. He wanted Tyler to know the offer still stood, that there was money set aside, that he thought of him. Tyler thanked him and said he was good. He said he was exactly where he was supposed to be. I don't know if I deserve the children I have. I suspect I don't, fully. But I know what they showed me in those 6 weeks of hidden kittens and washed sheets and midnight laughter. They showed me that goodness is not always loud, and love is not always visible. And the thing you are most afraid of is sometimes just a pile of white cat hair on a sheet, and the people you were afraid for are fine, have always been fine, have in fact been quietly holding everything together while you were busy being afraid. I pulled a sheet off a bed and I saw the worst thing I could imagine. The truth was 8 kittens in a wire crate in a cold garage, and 2 teenagers who loved each other like real siblings and loved me enough to try to fix what was broken without making me feel like it was broken. That's what I found. That is what I will carry. All of it. The shame and the gratitude together, the way you carry things that belong to each other, because you can't have one without the other and you wouldn't want to. Because the gratitude without the shame would be too easy, and what my children deserve from me is not easy. What they deserve is the full weight of understanding what they did and who they are. I know it now. I won't forget it. If this story found you on a hard day, I hope it helped. Take care of your people. Tell them when you're scared. Let them tell you when they are. Most of the time, the locked door has a simpler explanation than the one your fear is building, and the people behind it are trying to do something kind. Subscribe, leave a like, and hit the bell, because every week there's another story. And some of them will surprise you just like this one surprised me.